The first time I saw her, she was crying in the frozen food aisle of a Walmart at 2 in the morning, clutching a loaf of bread, like it was the only thing keeping her. Tethered to this world, I should have walked past. God knows I had my own demons, chasing me through that fluorescent lit maze of midnight desperation. But something about the way her shoulders shook, silent and small, made me stop. Made me remember what it felt like to be invisible in a crowd. To hurt so badly that even breathing felt like an act of defiance against a universe that didn't care. I didn't know her name yet. Didn't know that this stranger would become the reason. I started believing in people again. It was March in Detroit, that cruel month when winter refuses to release its grip, and spring feels like a lie someone told to keep you going. I'd been working double shifts at the hospital, watching people die and be born in equal measure, feeling increasingly numb to both miracles and tragedies. My marriage had ended 6 months earlier. My ex-wife had looked at me one morning over cold coffee and said she didn't recognize me anymore. The worst part was I didn't recognize myself either. So there I was, a 42-year-old ER nurse buying frozen dinners at an hour when only insomniacs and the broken ventured out. When I encountered her, "Are you okay?" The words came out before I could stop them, before my practiced cynicism could remind me that getting involved meant getting hurt. She looked up and I saw a face younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-20s with eyes that had seen too much too soon. Those eyes darted to the exit, calculating escape routes, and I recognized the look. Prey assessing a predator. I took a step back, raising my hand slightly. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I'm a nurse." "You just looked like you might need help. I can leave you alone if you want." She studied me for a long moment, and I watched her decide to trust me. It was like watching someone jump off a cliff, hoping for water instead of rocks. "I'm okay," she whispered, but her voice cracked on the second word, betraying her. I'm just having a hard time." I nodded because what else could I do? I grabbed a cart and started shopping, keeping a respectful distance but staying in the same aisle. After a minute, she spoke again. "Do you ever feel like you're drowning, but everyone around you is breathing just fine?" The question hit me square in the chest. I stopped pretending to examine pasta sauce and turned to face her fully. "Every single day," I admitted. That's how it started. Not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with two strangers, acknowledging their brokenness in a Walmart at 2 in the morning. We sat in my car in that parking lot until dawn broke, talking about everything and nothing. Her name was Sarah. She'd been living in her car for 3 weeks after escaping an abusive relationship. She'd worked as a teacher's aide but lost her job when she missed. Too many days covering bruises, with makeup and lies. She had $17 to her name and no family within 1,000 miles. I did something that surprised both of us. I took her to a diner and bought her breakfast. Real food, not the bread she'd been crying over. While she ate like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days, I made phone calls. By 10 that morning, I'd found her a spot in a women's shelter that had an opening. I gave her $200 cash, all I could spare from my own thin finances and my phone number. "You don't have to call," I told her. "But if you need anything at all, you can reach me." She cried again, but this time it was different. This time someone saw her. I thought that would be the end of it. A good deed done, a momentary intersection of two broken paths. But Sarah called me 3 days later, then a week later. Then we fell into a pattern. Coffee every Sunday morning at that same diner. She got a job at a bookstore, found a small apartment, started putting her life back together piece by piece. And somewhere in those Sunday morning conversations, I started putting myself back together too. Sarah had this way of seeing people, really seeing them. She noticed when our waitress looked tired and always left extra tips. She struck up conversations with homeless people downtown, treating them like humans instead of scenery. She volunteered at the shelter where she'd stayed, paying forward the kindness she'd received. Watching her choose compassion over bitterness, after everything she'd been through, humbled me. It reminded me why I'd become a nurse in the first place. Before the system and the sadness had worn me down to numb functionality. 6 months after that night in Walmart, Sarah called me on a Tuesday. Her voice sounded strange, tight, and urgent. "Can you meet me at the hospital? The big one downtown where you work?" My heart seized. "Are you hurt?" "What's wrong?" "Just come to the ER waiting room, please." I sprinted from the parking garage, scenarios racing through my mind. When I burst through the doors, I found Sarah sitting calmly in a chair, very much not hurt. Sitting next to her was a young boy, maybe 8 years old, with a swollen jaw and fearful eyes that I recognized immediately. "This is Marcus," Sarah said quietly. "I found him at the bookstore this afternoon. He came in after school like he does sometimes, but today he was different. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't meet my eyes. I've been watching him for weeks, seeing the signs." She'd seen what I'd trained myself not to see anymore, what burnout had made invisible: the flinching, the too careful movements, the desperate hunger for any scrap of kindness. She'd seen a child being abused, and she'd acted. We spent the next 4 hours navigating the nightmare of mandatory reporting, CPS investigations, and a terrified child who didn't want to. Betray his father but couldn't. Take another beating. I held Marcus while he cried. Sarah held me while I broke down in the hallway afterward, all my carefully constructed walls crumbling at once. That night I remembered why any of this mattered. Marcus went to foster care. Sarah and I visited him regularly, bringing books and normalcy and proof that adults could be safe. She started a program at her bookstore, creating a space where kids could come after school, where trained volunteers watched for signs of trouble. I started really looking at my patients again, seeing beyond their symptoms to their stories. A year later, Sarah stood in front of the city council, testifying about child abuse prevention. The local news covered it. Her program had identified and helped 12 children. She'd transformed her trauma into purpose, her pain into power. I sat in the audience and watched this woman who'd been weeping over bread in a Walmart speak with the authority of someone who'd walked through hell and decided to build a lighthouse for others, still trapped in the dark. After her testimony, a reporter asked her why she did it, why she chose to work with vulnerable children when her own wounds were still healing. Sarah looked directly into the camera, and I saw the ghost of that broken girl from the frozen food aisle. "Because someone saw me when I was invisible," she said simply. Someone chose kindness when they could have chosen to keep walking. That choice saved my life. Now it's my turn to see people. It's all our turns. The segment went viral. Donations poured in. Her program expanded to 5 bookstores across the city. But more than that, something shifted. People started paying attention to each other again, really paying attention. I saw it in my ER, in the way a security guard stopped to talk with a homeless woman, instead of moving her along, in the way a mother comforted a stranger's crying child in the waiting room, in the small acts of recognition that reminded people they weren't invisible. 3 years after that night in Walmart, Sarah called me to meet her at the original bookstore. When I arrived, I found her standing outside with Marcus, now 11 and thriving in a permanent adoptive home. Next to him stood a teenager girl, 2 younger boys and an elderly woman, all people Sarah's program had helped or who had been inspired to start their own community initiatives. "I wanted to title her," Sarah said, smiling at my confused expression. I wanted to give her a name. That moment in Walmart when you stopped and saw me, I've been calling it that night for 3 years, but it deserves better. It deserves to be named and remembered and honored for what it was. A choosing. You chose to see me, so I'm titling her that version of me who thought she was drowning. I'm calling her Seen, because that's what you gave me. That's what we can all give each other. She'd had plaques made for everyone there. Small copper plates that said simply, "I see you." Not as an achievement or award, but as a promise and reminder. I held mine and cried like I hadn't cried since my marriage ended, since I'd forgotten how to feel anything beyond exhaustion. But these were different tears. These were tears of recognition and resurrection, of remembering that we're all just walking each other home through this darkness, that the smallest acts of witnessing can change everything. Sarah titled her that night. She gave name and honor to her broken self, to the moment when kindness interrupted despair. And in doing so, she taught me to title my own moments of salvation, to recognize them as sacred turning points rather than random chance. We're all carrying versions of ourselves that need to be seen and titled and honored. The ones who kept going when everything said to quit. The ones who chose compassion when bitterness would have been easier. The ones who looked up from their own pain long enough to notice someone else's. Title her. Title him. Title them. Title yourself. See the person crying in the frozen food aisle. See the child with fearful eyes. See your own reflection in the mirror and recognize the miracle of your survival. Because kindness isn't some grand gesture that changes the world all at once. It's two strangers in a parking lot at dawn. It's showing up for Sunday morning coffee. It's choosing to stay when leaving would be simpler. It's building lighthouses in the darkness and trusting that someone, somewhere, will find their way home by that light. Sarah saved 12 children that first year, but really she saved 13. She saved herself by choosing to see others. And she saved me by letting me remember what it means to be human in a world that tries so hard to make us numb. Every time I pass that Walmart now, I think about alternate universes. The one where I kept walking. The one where Sarah disappeared into statistics and tragedy. The one where we both stayed broken and alone. But this is the universe where we chose differently. Where two drowning people grabbed each other and discovered they could float. Where one moment of seeing cascaded into hundreds of small miracles. So title her, That Version of You Who Needed to Be Seen. That version of you who chose to see someone else. Give name to your salvation moments and carry them like copper plates over your heart. Because in the end, we're all just strangers in the fluorescent-lit aisles of our private despairs, waiting for someone to stop and ask if we're okay. And we're all capable of being the one who stops. That's the power of humanity. Not in grand heroics, but in the simple, revolutionary act of witnessing each other's existence and declaring it matters. You matter. I see you. Title her and let the healing begin.